As we're encouraging people to join in the silent minute day by day to pray or meditate for peace in our world, thinking particularly about the terrible events that are happening in Europe just now, we ask ourselves the question, why pray? Sometimes you think about praying as trying to change God's mind, as if we can convince him to do something which he hadn't thought of or wasn't willing to do. We're like children. You remember when your children are little and they want something, they tug on your trousers or they pull on your shirt sleeve and they say, please, mummy, please, daddy. And if you don't give them what they want, then they increase the emotional intensity until they hope to win you over. And they have a very wide and extensive armory in their battle to exert their will over you. Is that how we see prayer and God? I think there's another way of seeing it, because we can't really change God's mind, and we can't tell him about something he doesn't know about, because he already knows everything. I think it's more that God empowers us to do things, and that when we're praying, we're applying our will and joining our will with other people to make certain things happen. And we have enormous powers of creativity, of imagination. If we just think of the technological advances that have happened in our world in the last 100 or so years, it's only just over 100 years since mankind first found a way of getting off the ground for more than a few seconds at a time. And now we have travel all around the world and even into space and to the moon. But these powers of creativity can be used for good or for evil. Our world's recent response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been quite astonishing. The speed with which we develop vaccines, the way in which we're able to change our whole way of life to support those who were ill and to enable our hospitals to provide care. But if you look at other examples, go back a few years to the recovery and growth of pre-war Germany, that was almost miraculous, but subverted, of course, eventually by the effects of evil. Now, it's easy to fall into the temptation of thinking that Hitler, in that case, was the sole cause and was an evil person. Such demonization detaches us from responsibility, because in that case, we need to remember that the context in which his message grew and gained attraction was the very harsh reparations that the nations fighting in the First World War had imposed upon Germany then. There are so many ways in which we all bear responsibility. Much of our wealth in this country derives from the arms trade, and some of those arms get to places where they shouldn't be. But demonization also runs counter to our basic Christian theology, which is that God creates and loves every person without exception. And that, of course, is deeply challenging to us. We're tempted to view Vladimir Putin in the same way, as an evil person. Certainly he is responsible for very evil actions, but to judge him as evil is first not our right. God alone is judge. And secondly, it removes the possibility that he might see the light. You're probably amused at such a suggestion, but remember that one of the pillars of the Christian faith was St. Paul. And St. Paul, before his conversion, was someone who turned over Christians to be tortured, to be crucified, to be put to death in the arena by fighting lions. He was a horrendous persecutor. And two miracles happened. One, his conversion on the road to Damascus, when he literally saw the light of Christ. And the other, when the early church received, forgave, and accepted him. And in some ways, I think that was the greater miracle. And the result, of course, was one of the founding fathers of the Christian faith. For this conversion, this changing of mind, we should pray with great fervour. C.S. Lewis, in his Screwtape Letters, shows an image of the devil as wanting above all to set people against one another, as if the greatest motivation in the devil's existence is a seething jealousy of people's community. Because, of course, he has no community. He is entirely alone. Whether you think of the devil as a real person or an idea actually doesn't matter. The result is the same. And this notion of no community, complete aloneness, drives his desire to destroy all communities, from nations to families, friendships, and marriages. And we are all involved in that process from time to time, especially when we are tempted to hate. That perhaps is the reason that Jesus commands us to love our enemies and to pray for those who persecute us. To hate the sin, yes, but to love the sinner. And what our common observance of a time of prayer does is to align ourselves with that objective. If we look at the problems that the world faces now, and the resources, the skills, the systems, the technologies, the discoveries that we have at our disposal, we should be able to resolve them all. If we can get human beings onto the moon and back, then other problems that surround us shrink by comparison. We should be able to do this instead of letting fear, envy, and pride and greed drive us apart from one another. Praying for a common purpose can help us to solve the world's problems. We know we have done it so many times. So let us join in this worldwide movement to pray for peace in God's world at every day at 8 o'clock in the evening. May God bless you all.